How is everything for everyone? You guys doing all right?
For myself, I'm reviewing for the test.
Okay.
It's a lot to take in.
It is a lot to take in. I'm glad you're doing it now. We still got tonight or this week and then next week, and then we have to test. So we're got us plenty of time to drill. Yes. You have enough time. If you're working on it now, that's good because it gives us enough time to Q&A. You make sure you understand all the terms in lab. You help me guide you, and then also gives us good time to do drilling, and I can guide you in the right ways of studying for it. By the time you're on the test, you should be fine. If you come to class. Otherwise, it's probably a little bit overwhelming. But just if you feel overwhelmed, just keep going through the material and work with the process, and talk to me about your concerns if you want, so I can help you, clarify things, or also help try to make you not too nervous and guide you in your studies, because sometimes nervousness can create, as I know with myself, can create a little procrastination, and we want to try to avoid that if we can.
Yeah, and I also have a question about the test. So we're just gonna have to, know which muscle is this and which bone is that, or do we have to know the attachment too for the bone, for the muscles?
No, you have to know three things. You want to know bones, the whole bone. Then you want to know
Okay.
landmarks on the bone. So, like, you got the frontal bone is the whole front, and then you got in between the eyebrows, that's the glabella. So that's a landmark. The whole bone will be the frontal bone. So I ask you either or.
Got it.
And then the third thing I ask is the muscle, and you only give me the muscle name. You don't have to do origin insertion.
Okay, so we don't have to know the organ and then the action and the insertion, I think.
No, I do this during the lecture and then doing the homework.
Right.
That you guys are familiar with it and know about it, but I don't make you study that.
Got it. Okay.
That would be too much. That would be too much. No, I rather have a few extra muscles in there, and give you a thoroughly thorough basic understanding, but we don't need to go too crazy about memorization. And the other thing is, on the test, you have a term list that you bring with you, or you take one from my end, but you can write on that term list and use it like it's a cheat sheet. And then you can bring that with you and use that one paper front and back for your own notes, and help to remind things. So I've been handing it around one of them. That was a really high end product from one of the former students who drew everything. You can go as elaborate as you want to on that. Just have one page. The front is the term list, and the back is or the front also. You can draw on it or write on it, or do what you need to do, but have a cheat sheet with you. Okay, make sure you know that.
Okay.
It's about organizing the material. That's really one of the key pieces about this whole thing, that I think it has to do, and so I want to encourage that part with that. So just make sure you tell each other that, because some of you guys probably haven't heard about it yet, or also might think that can't be true, but it is. All right, so is that helpful, or any other questions with that? Amal?
Yes.
That's
That
it.
was
That's
great.
good.
Thank you.
All
Yeah,
right,
I
good,
just
good.
want to know because the action and the insertion and the organ, I felt like they're very similar.
Right.
So I might get confused which muscle is which.
Yeah, no,
Yeah.
that's something that deeper, in the next study around, you can add that layer, I feel, and it probably is more sensible, but at this point, it's too much. It's too much.
Okay, thank you so much.
Yeah. Let me close these up. So I put a student view in, and all of a sudden it gives me lots of weeks. All right, so this week we're going to continue the muscles, and we're going to go to lower extremity muscles. And as with the upper extremities, I group the muscles in kind of functional segments. So I'm going to talk about wherever that is down here, things that move the hip around, and then things that move the knee around, and then things that move the ankle around. And then we got under each tab, we got a few of those muscles. Who actually, the turning the foot out is its specialty. The turning the foot out, the lateral rotation, is actually done by muscles in the back of the hip. But then we have a few muscles that abduct, that bring the thigh out on the hip joint, and then we got some that bring it in. Adduct, those are wherever they are. They should be somewhere here. Uh-oh. I guess I gotta go through that again. There is some adductors somewhere. They might be coming up a little later there. But then I also have hip flexors, and that's the bringing the hip forward. Let me take a note on that. I hope I didn't miss that part. Adductors. That would be strange. And then we got muscles that move the knee around, and those muscles are mostly in the thigh. So the hip moving muscles are mostly in the pelvic area, and then we have the movers of the hip. And I might have to put that one in there because, let me see. Yes, I did. For some reason, I didn't put that on the hip because they're regionally in the thigh. So the hip muscles that bring the thigh into the leg are the adductor muscles, adding a limb to it. And so those are hip movers. And then from there, we have knee movers, which basically the knee moves, flexes, and extends. It's not that much. So we have knee extensors. And then up here, we have the hamstrings, and those are the knee flexors. And then lastly, in this section, we go down to the calf, and we work the calf muscles, and we have a few muscles, but mostly again we push the toes down or we push the toes up. So we flex or we extend, and then we'll go through those there. And we also go through all of those muscles in the lab tonight as well, or this week. It's the first one is tonight. So make sure you show up there, because these are really helpful to see on the models and really work with the models. It makes it much clearer of what we're looking at. Then the other thing that I want to point out always in here is under the muscle, I have a little video clip that goes to a cadaver video that shows it isolated and somebody explains it. So that can be a very helpful visual depending on how you study. So at least try it out and look at a couple of those or so to see what you think. And then I said it in class before, I have these videos up here again under the pro study tips as well. But then I also have muscle pictures that go to a PDF that shows the muscles nicely, all isolated. Not that one, but down here, all the muscles get just the isolated version. There's more muscles that we study, but we do a lot of those muscles. We do a lot of those muscles. These are the abdominal muscles, and then the mouth, the facial muscles. So this is potentially really helpful to just color, to label, to test yourself, to cut out, make little cards with it, and grill your brain that way a little. Since the test is recognizing, this is pretty good material for that, because it's about recognizing it. And then I did put together, and I went through that last week in class. I did put together a newer sort of a chart that I built from an old one that I used to, where I have the muscles visualized in a way that are really easy to see of where they are. They don't appear that way in real life. They are more fleshed in, and you don't have lines, but you have whole red stuff. But the lines make it easier to see the attachments. And then I do go into the attachment sides, the origin, insertion, and then also the action at the end. So that might be interesting to go through, even if you're just looking at the picture and you try to remember or label them as a study tool. But also what's in here that might be a little overwhelming at first, now to begin with, but I have all the motions that the extremities do described, so like bringing the arm out, and then underneath, for example, in abduction, and then underneath it, I write down which muscle is the prime, which are the movers of those that motion, which create that motion. And it goes in sequence by the main important muscle to move it, the second one, and the third one, and so forth. And so it's kind of an interesting charge to have, especially if you have like a pathology or a pain or something in a specific movement pattern. Then you can start isolating what could be the problem, what could be, and so we can we can you can go to the doctor or to the therapist and says like, let's work on those muscles a little bit, maybe there's my problem or so. So that's sort of a little added on thing that is nowhere, I don't have that anywhere else listed like that. It's one of the things I got through from chiropractic school. It's a German textbook that has these listed like that, and I just really thought it was excellent the way they did that. Good. So that's these pro tips for that. So that's the lectures. It's not as much material because we're gearing up to the tests, right? So even though normally the test will be next week, but this time, because next week there is a Wednesday class is off for a professional day, so we're gonna push it down 1 week because I want to do it in the same week for everyone, and so we have an extra week to study for it, but we have questions associated with that lecture, and then we have the labeling associated with that as well. The labeling on the extremity muscles is quite intensive because we do write the origin, insertion, and action into it. So make sure you space your time out a little bit. And then we do a posture evaluation discussion on that, just a brief, back and forth. What did you learn? And then that way we can mark it off and put it into the archive, so to speak. And we finish with the questions and tips, which is actually what I'm going through now, as you probably have seen some of that since I've been typing before we started the class. And what else is well, this week we also still are working on the injury prevention eval. And so depending on how tonight or this week goes in lab, depending on how many students have done the stuff already or are working on it or where they're at, we're going to do some of that in class. We can also do some of that in lab together, since it's quite an extensive evaluation. But I still think it's a helpful one to keep in there because it really helps us understand, not just integrate the material better, but also helps us understand the body, the potential weaknesses or time things like the hammies are too tight, and so when you go run down the street, it'll catch potentially, and we'll want to preemptively figure out a few of those pieces that are a weaker link in our system. I do that for myself too, and it's especially getting a little older. It's very helpful to be more aware of these things. And this evaluation is an orthopedic eval. It's not just random done. This is really tested by the orthopedic community, and I just thought it'd be helpful to just put it in there as well because it's not that difficult information. It's just often how it's presented that makes it more challenging. And I think the more we know, the more I have students who pass that along to their parents because they're getting into their 50s or so. And so that might be, so I keep it in there, but we can do some of that tonight or this week in lab also if it's cumbersome to do it all at home. Just I will talk about it. And then the next thing, or well, let's first ask any questions to those pieces. No.
Yes, you talked about like we're not gonna be testing next week, so it's gonna be the week after that. So next week, are we gonna take something new, or we're just gonna be reviewing?
No, we have to go through some of the heart, but
Got it.
I unfortunately, it's a little bit overlap. But the heart, the heart, we do the dissection of the heart afterwards. I don't think we got it in next week, and so we don't go the same depth in terms of the yeah, we have to move on. But the lab after the test will be the bigger lab in terms of the hard stuff where we do a dissection, I believe. I have to look at that. Yeah, unfortunately, yeah. I think next week we'll still spend a fair amount of time on prepping for the test too. That you guys are really ready for it, and so give enough room for Q&A and then some room to drill you guys and make sure everything is as clear as possible. So I think that'll be just fine to do it that way. um, and yeah, it gives you an extra week even though you start processing new material. Um, um, what else was going to say? Oh yeah, and then we're starting now also to have as we get into the third part sort of the course in terms of tests, we're also gonna have a pathology project that we're gonna start in the next few weeks, and this is the first time I'm bringing it straight back to the classroom. So I'm going sort of through the steps right now of how to structure that, but essentially what I want you to do is work in groups of three, sometimes four, but three is usually a good number, and choose a pathology that you would like to study, and then from there, um, study go to the internet and do some research on the disease process, and then answer questions that I want or parts that I want in that presentation. It's about a 10-minute presentation. It's nothing fancy. I want to sort of really concise stuff, but I want you to explain to the class what the pathology is, what is diabetes, like give a little pathophysiology, like what is the process that causes diabetes, or what is the malfunction that creates that state of diabetes, and then as a second portion, go into what is medicine doing for us in that realm, like get us medicine or get us surgery, and then a third part is what can I do to aid the situation, like in diabetes I could change my diet, I can go walk, I can balance out things more with more fiber and stuff like that, and so then I want the group to then in the last couple of weeks of the semester most likely to present in sort of quick elevator format, like meaning concise, not too fluffy, like each member talks like 2 to 3 minutes or 3 to 4 minutes and presents their part of the presentation. I generally have each person do one part, like either the explanation of the pathology, then or the medical approach, and then or the what can I do myself to help the situation approach. And I guide you through the process of it. Usually we make a PowerPoint or a picture presentation. Sort of you do it, and then I show you how. If you don't, or guide you in, generally using as much pictures as possible and as a few words as possible is kind of the guide. But I'll guide you through that process, and then towards the end of the semester, we are ready to have some presentations done, and then that gives you. It's usually actually, I know at first it's like, oh my god, we got to do what, but it usually ends up being an enjoyable process. And by the time we finish, I have very few students who tell me they really didn't like doing that, and mostly it's like it's an accomplishment sort of feeling. And I've realized, or I think, I've done these classes for a lot of years now, and so a lot of times I can guide you a little bit in the small little knowledge that I gained in experience of doing these PowerPoints or doing these presentation things. And that also, I think, especially if you get into a college environment where that is more, you got to just do some of that stuff, which is a good thing, because being able to communicate to the public is a very good, or the class at large is a very good thing to play with that, and or get better at that. And so it gives us also an experience to learn from doing that in a hopefully environment that is sort of safe, and I can guide you through it as much as possible. But we'll start doing that in the classroom. I'm probably going to talk in Zoom about it, but mostly I want to do that uh, be a lab class based thing. Not that you don't do research at home and do the stuff at home, but I want to have sessions where we kind of integrate and we work together, because it's also then we're all the 3 or 4 people at the same table in the same room, and it's just much easier, as we've seen with the pandemic, or this in this project that I see with the pandemic, it gets really hard when you have multiple people work together and it's just a Zoom environment and everybody does their own thing. It's hard to get together and be able to meet. All right, so that's off my chest. Any initial thoughts on that kind of a thing?
Yeah, I took a look at it on Canvas and I was wondering, because you said presentation, I was like, is it going to be groups or is it going to be individuals?
Yeah,
but I'm looking forward to it.
Good. Yeah, no, it's groups. Did I leave it on there? I probably left it.
Yeah, I just took a quick look. I didn't open it. I was like, okay.
Yeah, I got somewhere I have in one of the weeks. Yeah, I start doing that. Well, yeah, I'm probably going to also open some of the prompts because it has a lot of the explanations in it of what I want and it's guiding kind of thing. So we'll probably work a combination of having things on Canvas presented and then discussing it and bringing it to you guys in the lab portion of the class. Yeah, I think it'll be fun. Usually fun. Start thinking of a pathology you would like to work on and investigate a little more. That's curious, makes you curious. Maybe that's the first step. Maybe you could start doing that now, next couple weeks. All right.
Mm-hmm.
Good.
The thing is, we have to talk with the group before you choose a topic that we gotta talk about, because you can't just make up your mind and go do your research and then
but don't do that. The group needs to be clear. First thing we got to do is figure out what we're going to work on, and so that will be the first step. But if you start thinking individually of what you would like to work on, and then depending on when we were online, one of the things you could do is who wants to work on diabetes, and then you start having people that are interested in that, and those form the group. But in a classroom, often the tables are sort of set by now, and people sit with each other, and so we'll see how that goes. But if you start thinking of a couple of things you might be interested in, and also maybe why, then we're gonna come up with something that the whole group will be okay with. But yeah, the more buy-in we have in the group of what they want to do, the easier just doing it is. That's always a thing.
Okay.
Yeah. All right. Good. Any other questions?